Hello, my darlings, and welcome to day 2 of Advent Adventure. Yes, guess what I've got lined up for you today? It's a John Christopher, a first edition John Christopher from 1962, which makes this 62 years old. It is an original, The World in Winter. Yes. And you'll notice inside it says first edition, and they had it marked in for £50, and it was 16 shillings when it was sold in 1962. So that's not a bad appreciation, is it? Over 62 years. I'll read you the blurb. The winter was extraordinarily severe. In London, the Thames froze and the whole of Europe lay under snow. When the spring should have come, the terrible cold persisted, not just in Europe, but all over the northern hemisphere. And even those with no access to official secrets could see what was coming. Nothing could save the crops on which half the world depended. Famine and cold would quickly lead to the breakdown of all order, and out of the holocaust only a few people could hope to survive. Andrew Leedon was among the lucky ones to be able to escape to Nigeria before the end came. Among the flood of refugees who became the new poor of Africa, it is from there that he returns to the desolate snowfields of England, where the climax of the story takes place. Well, yeah, I would say it's split into 3 parts, is The World in Winter, and it's got 253 pages. So it's a bit of a quick read. I just love the artwork. That's obviously Andrew Leedon and his wife Carol, and that's Big Ben, what's left of it. And as it's a wraparound cover, you see more refugees there. Nelson's column, if you can just see that. Yeah. And then you flip round onto the back, and the rest of the skyline is St. Paul's Cathedral. And more refugees. Doesn't look so good for old Blighty, does it? Crikey. Eyre and Spottiswoode are the printers of this first edition, and it is in mint condition. And I popped this lovely dust jacket on it as well, and the artist is Stein. All right, in case anybody was wondering. John Christopher is his pen name. His name is actually Sam Ewald. Okay, so you didn't know if you knew that, but you do now. Anyway, our main protagonist is Andrew Leedon. He's married to Carol Leedon, and they have 2 sons, Robin and Jeremy. Robin is 10 and Jeremy is 8, and they're both at boarding school. Now, while they're at boarding school, Britain basically goes to hell in a handcart. It is a disaster of grand proportions. We have the winter of winters, and then we descend into absolute madness and chaos because the expected spring does not arrive, and everyone can see that something is clearly very, very wrong, and we just go from madness to insanity and beyond. We have to adapt to our new conditions. The only safe places to go and live where we can survive the cold are either South Africa or South America, or I should say the whole of Africa as well. Because our protagonist Andrew ends up in Nigeria, where the most bizarre thing takes place, where the black man has the upper hand and the white man becomes his slave. Yeah, we're going to deal with society is going to get flipped on its head. Everything that we expect in the Northern Hemisphere has now gone completely. We are at the mercy of our African and South American overlords, and they rule the roost, and we are now their slaves. It's just weird. It's quite a racist book, but you've got to bear in mind that this book was written 62 years ago. So it's going to reflect the writing and the embodiment of how we treat people of the time. You know, it is a book of its time, but it is a cracking read. And with the desperate fight for survival, Andrew bizarrely ends up in a love triangle and his wife. Excuse me. Oh, it's been a long day. And yeah, I'm recording this after I finish work. Quite tiring day. And it's a bizarre love triangle that's going on where Carol is basically trying to get by. Now, Carol is a stunningly beautiful woman, and basically she's turning tricks so that she survives. And I wouldn't say she's the most maternal woman, but she will ensure that her children are okay. I think Andrew's a better parent than Carol, but Carol's been written in the vein of she's beautiful, she's glamorous, she'll use her womanly wiles to find and get what she needs to survive. And she'll basically bonk anything that can get her higher up the pecking order. She's a bit mercenary. Yes, I would say she's mercenary. What the white man is living in is basically the slums of Africa. It's just everything has flip-flopped, tipsy-turvy on its head. And facing what he's facing and realizing that this isn't what he wants and it's not the life to which he has become accustomed, the man forgets when he's in the heat how desolate and bleak Europe now is. I mean, the United Kingdom is a vast white iceberg. There is nothing left. You cannot grow food on it. You cannot live on it. It's gone back to being a tribal system as the United Kingdom, and only the strong will survive. And packs of men are roaming the frozen wastelands like wolves, and they just take what they want, take everything and kill the weakest, if you like. It was written 30 years before The Day After Tomorrow was even thought of. So Whitley Strieber basically gleaned an awful lot of information. Arnold Federbush also must have read this book because he wrote Ice, and you know, Douglas Orgill and John Gribben, who did The Sixth Winter, which I've done those previous, because I do find an Ice Age novel is very, very interesting. And if if I look at what I know and what I've studied and the people that I've worked with over the years, it's highly plausible that we could enter an ice age at some point in the future if climate chaos doesn't calm down. You know, we could have quite severe winters. Some of the scientists that I have known in the past don't put it out of the realms of impossibility, shall we put it that way, which is why I am absolutely fascinated with an Ice Age novel of the United Kingdom turning into absolute chaos, and how do we survive? Well, the lucky ones, are they the lucky ones? They end up going out to the slums of Africa and South America, and this is their story basically. And will they survive, and do they come back to the United Kingdom, and if so, what are they going to find when they get here? I'm trying not to ruin the plot for you, my darlings, because it's such a rollickingly good read. I mean, anything by John Christopher, you are going to get an absolute classic, absolute corker of a novel. I'm only doing you a very, very quick look at this for the Advent Adventure, but I will come back and do this in much further depth, like I did the Death of Grass. Because John Christopher he's unique, right? Well, Sam is unique in the way that he writes his apocalyptic fiction. And I do believe it stands up to the test of time. I know I said it was a book written of its time, but if you take the way that everything has played out, I don't think we behave any differently back then as what we would do now, faced with an utter annihilation of us from the United Kingdom, from Europe even. The Northern Hemisphere is basically done. There is nothing that can grow here at all. The sun, something has gone wrong with the sun, and it's not working the way that it should be doing, which is why the Northern Hemisphere is now a ball of ice. And it's a reflection upon mankind and the barbarism that we turn to in order to ensure that our tribe survives. And it's a very humbling book that basically shows us what it would be like to be on the receiving end of the racism. And suddenly the white man is down and the black man has risen. And it's just a very, very interesting take upon that. And I'm going to read you a little bit from chapter 1 of part 2. I think it is. Yeah, part 2, chapter 1. Besides arranging the flight itself, David had also dealt with the currency question. Under present conditions, there was no hope of selling the house in Denham Crescent, nor of obtaining a mortgage on it, and most other goods were similarly unnegotiable. He did manage to get £300 for Madeline's fur coat. Her final liquid assets worked out at just over £700. to which David himself contributed a further 500. He smiled when she protested that he might need it in London. Not in the Pale. The new currency is power, and I have enough to get by. You can invest it for me in Nigeria, and I'll collect it with interest when I come. Andrew found that £260 was all he could raise himself. The rest was tied up in equity shares, and the stock exchange has suspended trading for an indefinite period. I can get a bank draft through for Maddie, David said, as my wife, but a separate one for you, Andy, would be too tricky. If he's willing to trust you, I can have the whole lot credited to your account at the bank in Lagos. You can take a tenner apiece in notes to cover your incidental expenses until you get to the bank. They booked in at a newly built Hotel Africa. That too had been arranged by David. The hotel was very full, and they had to accept rooms on a different floor. Andrew took the room on the 5th floor at the back. Madeline's on the 3rd floor, overlooked the marina and the lagoon. It was evening when they arrived. Beyond the lights of the marina itself, the lagoon was dark. Further off on the mainland, they could see the bright flash of neon. They found, on going down to dinner, that while most of the diners were black, all the waiters were white-skinned. They were served by a tall, thin, grey-haired man. He came from Frankfurt and handled the plates with some awkwardness. He apologized for his clumsiness. He had, it appeared, been a shopkeeper. "What's it like in Frankfurt?" Andrew asked. He looked at them with a cold, remote smile. "The buildings still stand. The fine new American buildings and the fine new roads are still there, under the ice. I went back to Frankfurt in 1945, to the ruins. It was alive then. Now it is dead." "How long have you been here?" Madeline asked. 3 weeks, madam." "No regrets?" "But of course not. Where we live it is a little primitive, perhaps, for my family, but I have a good job. The dash is very good." "The dash?" The waiter smiled. "The vernacular for tips. The wage itself is not high, of course." With the coffee he brought a note for Andrew. It read: "Dear Andrew, David tells me you're arriving today and staying at the Africa. If you would like to see me, I shall be at the Island Club from about 9:30 onwards. Or you can leave a message for me there. Yours, Carol." "The Island Club?" Andrew said to the waiter. "Is it far from the hotel?" "Not very far, sir." Andrew showed the note to Madeline. "Shall we go along there?" "Only one of us is invited." "That doesn't matter." "I think it does. David may not have mentioned you were coming today as well. More likely she wants to talk over private matters. There must be things to discuss." "You're part of my private life," Andrew said. "Private, if not intimate." Madeline smiled. "Not of Carol's, though. Anyway, I think I would like an early night. You go along, Andy. You can tell me all about it in the morning. See, that's what I meant about the really awkward love triangle. It's beyond bonkers. It really is. I mean, the whole world's going to hell. You're stuck in the middle of an ice age, and you're arguing the finer points about your divorce." Goodness me. How incredibly British to be having a three-way affair in the middle of a crisis with a stiff upper lip. And what about the children? Oh, I'm sure Robin and, oh gosh, what was this little boy called? Robin and Jeremy, that's it. Robin and Jeremy will be absolutely fine. I mean, they've had the best of British education. They're going to be absolutely fine while Mummy bonks her way around Africa, going after the top dog position, and Daddy seems to be worrying about the boys, worrying about his job, and not very satisfied with the life that he has, and thinks about good old Blighty. It can't be that bad. It's just typical, typical British white male. I'm sorry, but yes, mm, it's a very interesting book. Hmm. Yes, a very interesting book indeed. And that, my darlings, is where I will leave The World in Winter by John Christopher, also known as Samuel. Yes, we will leave it there for now. Thank you very much for following me on day 2 of Advent Adventure. And I look forward to coming back with day 3 with who knows what. It will be something wintry, of course, with it being a winter. And yeah, Ice Age novels. They're a lot of fun. Survival novels, a lot of fun. Yeah. Anyway, if you like what I've done, you can always give me a thumbs up. And if you really like what I've done, you can always give me a follow and come back tomorrow to see what I will bring you for your Advent adventure. Take care, my darlings. Bye bye.